All right, welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast, hosted by the Fantasy Holics. Back again on YouTube, Brant. I know you and I are always excited to get our fat faces back in the public eye, but here we are again, going through another couple division breakdown here of some offseason needs, salary cap, and draft picks of some divisions. And this week we're going to be covering the NFC and AFC West. The wild wests of football. Two pretty fun divisions. One you got some surprise come out of with you guys and the Seahawks in the NFC. Some strong contenders there as well with the 49ers. A couple of disappointments in the Cardinals and the Rams. And then on the AFC side, you got the Super Bowl champs. Got a lot of drama coming out of LA or Las Vegas right now, excuse me. And then you kind of got like whatever the hell it is going on in Denver. And then we have the Chargers. So it should be a pretty decent episode today, pretty interesting. Again, I know these episodes aren't overly sexy. They aren't overly fun. Brant and I were talking prior to the show about how we're excited to get these over with and get back to doing some fun stuff. So, hopefully a couple weeks from now, after we wrap up the East and the North, we'll be able to get back into doing some fun stuff like mock drafts and draft prep and stuff before the NFL draft. So, Brant, that's enough of me rambling. You want to say hi to the folks and got anything you want to say before we jump into this?
How y'all doing today? Yeah, it was these episodes, like you said, they're not the sexiest things, but they are very useful in your dynasty leagues and going after people to trade for, which I do have a couple names to maybe go trade for off of a couple of these teams. I definitely want to get it out there. I think you're going to see a lot of fun come out of these teams that we talk about during this offseason. I think there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. It's like you said, Denver's going to have to figure it out. We'll talk about that. Vegas is going to have to. San Fran's like just right there at it. But those are teams that we'll talk about here shortly. But yeah, without further ado, if you want to jump us out with your first team, I'll let you go first this week because I think I took it first last week.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just rip the Band-Aid off and start with your Seattle Seahawks right off the jump. Mainly because of the four teams I'm going to discuss today. They're the only one with positive salary cap space right now. Right now, they're currently they're closer to 25 million in salary cap than they are 24, but they're at 24,700,000, give or take, in salary cap. They do it now. You guys do have some noticeable free agents, obviously. Specifically on the offense, like Rashad Penny, Travis Homer, Geno Smith, Drew Lock. You've got Blythe, your center there, and your backup center in Fuller. So those are definitely some names. Marquise Goodwin was as well another name, but I would assume that maybe Dwayne Eskridge finally steps into that third wide receiver role, maybe with any luck there. On the defensive side of the ball, you're losing you guys' defensive captain from last year in Cody Barton. You've got Poona Ford and Jonathan Abram and Ryan Neos, the safeties that we're filling in this year in the absence of the best safety in football. There's some names there. Obviously, I think your guys' defense would be better if you have a full season of Jamal Adams, if that ever does happen. But there is some noticeable free agents. You got some salary cap space to work with, so I don't necessarily think that is going to be a huge issue. I think you should get most of those guys re-signed if there's any of them you want. I mean, I know I speak for the entire fantasy community when I say we all want to see Drew Lock as the starter in Seattle. That's just something that needs to happen. He would take DK Metcalf to new levels.
Yeah, okay.
Probably the worst levels of DK's career. Yeah. But anyway, the one thing that I think is really interesting with Seattle is how good you guys played this year when it was supposed to be a down year. I know I heard about that a lot this season. Both of our teams were kind of right there in the thick of things forever. And then Atlanta fell out. Seattle made it to the playoffs on a rebuild year. But there's still a lot of benefit, right? You guys have the number 5 overall draft pick. There's 5. You guys have 9 total picks, 5 of which are in the top 83. So definitely some very exciting things there. Those should be some pieces that come in and make immediate impacts, but on both sides of the ball, wherever you guys decide to address. The one big question I think that everybody has with Seattle going into the offseason is who's under center next year? Did Geno do enough to get some kind of a lucrative contract with you guys? Are you guys going to take a gamble at somebody at 5? Like, a lot of people have a lot of different mixed answers on this, and I think that's going to be the biggest offseason talking point for Seattle. And I want to put it out there too, Brant. I know you and I have talked about this previously as well. Just because Seattle re-signs Geno doesn't mean that they won't draft somebody for Geno to mentor for a year or two as well. So definitely excited to hear your take on your Seahawks. Definitely should be a very fun offseason for you guys.
Yeah, I expect Poona Ford and Barton to both come back for the defensive side of the ball. Ryan Neal, I would absolutely love to see back because he did great filling in for Adams, and it would be fun to actually get to watch both of them out there, or maybe we could trade Adams and get some more money. But anyone that's talked to me about Adams knows my feelings on that. I'm assuming it's going to be Geno back under center for us next year. I know there's that rumor mill where he may be going to Tampa Bay following our quarterback's coach that went down there. My hope, and I know that, it's just my hope, and Seattle never does what I hope. My hope is that we keep Geno, let it rebuild for one more year, and maybe get Hayden Hooker in the second round or another guy down there in the second round that could help our rebuild. That's what I hope Seattle looks at. I really hope we don't pull somebody at 5 because there's too many defensive ends, and we definitely need a good pass rusher to add to our defense. So this draft is going to be fun. This is the one draft that me and my father actually decided we're going to go down to and be there for day 1 and 2. So I'll get to see the majority of those top 83 picks. So it's going to be a fun offseason for Seattle. We actually have some money. Jamal Adams hopefully might come back and actually play football more than 3 games. And we'll see how we look next year. I don't expect us to be in the thick of things trying to get back into the Super Bowl, but I definitely could see us maintaining where we were last year, maybe improving a little bit. The defense has to improve. And you can't expect Geno to be in a shootout every single game or whoever is under center.
So another question I have for you, Brant, too, is DJ Dallas the answer as a change of pace back, or do you expect, Rashad Penny to get like another 1-year deal with you guys? I know obviously Kenneth Walker is going to handle the brunt of things moving forward, but what do you expect to happen there in that backfield?
I think Penny's gone. We gave him the 1-year deal this past offseason. He got hurt again. I just don't see him staying in Seattle. I assume we'll probably bring Homer. You said Homer's the free agent, so I assume we'll probably bring Homer back on a cheap deal, and it will be Homer, Dallas, and Walker again for the majority of the season. Okay. That's what I assume. I don't see them making a huge splash going after somebody to back up or overtake Kenneth Walker. So I would assume those will still be the 3 names under contract in Seattle.
Okay.
So I'm going to jump into the Arizona Cardinals, another team that I absolutely love to talk about. But with their new head coach, Jonathan Gannon, the old DC, coming over from Philly, is going to bring a defensive mind over to that team, which that brings it straight into one of their notable free agents, and that's Byron Murphy, the quarterback. So they're losing a cornerback. They definitely got to address some spots on that defense, linebacker, cornerback. They struggled with pass rush as well. Arizona was really a team that struggled quite a bit this past year. They're losing on the offensive side. They're losing 2 guards and a center to free agency, so that they'll have to beef up that offensive line. They may need to get some shorter, beefier guys in order for their quarterback to be able to see over when he does return. I know Kyler Murray's on pace to miss quite a few games at the beginning of the year, so that will be something to keep an eye on. They're about 12.5 mil under the cap limit, so they do have a little bit of room to work with. They're about 3 mil over the league average. So with that 12.5 mil, I expect them to make some big, decent moves in free agency. I can honestly see them moving on from D-Hop. I know it's already been rumored that he's out the door, and James Conner's another name that you could see cut. I do know that he would save them some cap room as well. So I could see them being a player in one of these big name running backs. Connor did play a full year, I believe, last year. He showed he can hold up to the load, but it's going to be rough for Arizona starting off the season. So why not cut some dead ties, use that 12.5 mil to shore up some guys for, future years. Cause like I said, 12.5, and then they got 7 picks, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and 2 in the 6th round, to really help them, start the rebuild. They're kind of almost scratching the bottom of that division, and I don't see them crawling out of that basement next year with Kyler Murray missing some time. If D-Hop goes, Marquise Brown was very, very serviceable, and that's a guy that I'd be going after this offseason pretty hard. I'd be using, the whole hint that, D-Hop's still there. Brown wasn't the greatest with D-Hop, in hopes that D-Hop does move on this offseason. But they will have to add another wide receiver to that team. Even if they keep D-Hop, they're going to need to add one more wide receiver to that team. I know they have names eluding me. Help me out. The slot corner there, or slot wide receiver there.
Yeah, I was trying to think of who that was too.
Rondell Moore.
Yeah,
Rondell
there you
Moore.
go, Rondell. Yeah.
But if they move on from D-Hop, they're going to have to get somebody else on the outside to really allow Moore to move around a little bit more in the slot. So I expect them to use some of their draft picks for a wide receiver. I expect them to use the higher draft pick that they have to try to beef up that offensive line or even trade down. So Arizona's a team that I'll definitely be paying close attention to see what they do. So like I said, they have a little bit of money. They have some draft capital. They have some big names that they could be moving on from. D-Hop maybe going out there chasing a ring. So I expect Arizona to be a big player in this offseason.
Yeah, I think, especially when you talk about Arizona, my favorite thing of this offseason may be seeing where DeAndre Hopkins goes. I think D-Hop slowly became one of my favorite guys in the NFL, which is just odd because I'm not sure how I felt about him forever because, I always used to have that Julio Jones bias, but definitely interesting to see what happens with Julio or D-Hop, excuse me. A lot of people have brought up Chicago as a landing spot for him because of the trade capital they have, the draft cap or the salary cap space that they have. That could be a marriage that would just be beneficial for D-Hop and Justin Fields for fantasy. So there's definitely some big implications going to come out of that Arizona Cardinals offseason here. So that'll be something worth staying tuned to. So I'm going to move on into the Los Angeles Rams, Brant. And the first thing that I think is warranted and it needs to be said when you talk about them is holy Super Bowl hangover. Am I right? Mm-hmm. This team was maybe one of the biggest woeful underperformers of the entire NFL season last year between, Stafford's injury and then Kupp's injury and them not winning anything and the defense not being, great like it was in the past. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what they can do. They're kind of bringing the band back for one more year. It sounds like with Stafford and Kupp and McVay and Aaron Donald. There are the rumors that they're trying to trade Jalen Ramsey, which of course I think that's due to draft compensation and salary cap issues. But, going into the offseason with where things stand right now, they're $14 million over the salary cap limit already. So not a ton of cap flexibility. They have some notable free agents, not huge, but notable. Offense wise, they have Baker Mayfield, Brandon Powell, Malcolm Brown, Riley Dixon, and Matt Gay. I know I lumped the special teams guys with the punter and the kicker in there, but Riley Dixon and Matt Gay are both been pretty solid guys for them for quite a while, honestly, if you really look at it. And then on defense, they're losing some pretty good starters as well in the secondary with Troy Hill and Taylor Rapp. So those are two guys that are going to hurt them big time. And then also moving on from Jalen Ramsey, it'll be like a whole new group of guys bringing up that backside of the defense there. They also have Ashawn Robinson leaving, who was an absolute force to be reckoned with on that defensive line as well. Now, the problem is, Brant, that they only have 8 draft picks to try to fix any of this with. And of the 2 draft picks, only 2 of them are inside the top 180 picks. This is not a good situation here. I know we talked about Tampa Bay's salary cap issues the other day or last episode, and those numbers were astronomical. But 2 picks inside the top 180 does not do much to quickly help turn things around or get things in order for one last hurrah. So I'm not sure how McVay and the guys in the front office there are going to fix this and get things turned around in order for LA to potentially get back to a Super Bowl in Stafford's last hurrah here. But they're going to have to be super creative in order to get something done.
Yeah, the Rams are a prime example of going all in to win it all. They went all in. They gave up all their draft capital. They used up all their salary cap to go all in and win themselves a Super Bowl. And then, like you said, you alluded to the injuries and everything else caught back up to them the year following. They got to, I mean, they may try to do this one last hoorah with this team, but I really think they've got to move on for some players. They've got to move on from Jalen Ramsey. They got to figure out what they want to do with Aaron Donald. Like, do you want to run it back with us? Are you retiring after this year? Do you want to go to a different team to try to win yourself another ring? I think they really need to sit down in that front office and find out what they really want to do, because I don't think this team is built to win anymore. Their offense can be explosive. They're already making a pitch to get Robert Woods back, really bring the band back together, I guess. You might as well just trade Stafford back to Detroit, too, and just get the old LA Rams back. So, yeah, the Rams, they don't have a whole lot to work with this offseason. They're going to be a pretty boring team this offseason. The biggest thing, like you said, is going to be the Jalen Ramsey trade, and to see if Aaron Donald is going to stay with the Rams, or if he might end up on the trade block for one more hoorah to go get a title.
Certainly.
My next team is the San Francisco 49ers, and we'll just talk about the biggest question right off the back. What are we doing at quarterback? Is it going to be Brock Purdy? Is it going to be the guy that we gave up so much for in Trey Lance? Or are we just going to go ahead and re-sign Jimmy G and let him play? So, yeah, they got to figure out what they're doing at quarterback. Their running back situation is perfectly fine with McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell and all them still in the backfield. They're not losing any of those guys. Wide receiver-wise, they got Ayuk, they got Debo, they got their prime two guys. I expect them to add another one either via the draft or free agency, but not a huge name, I wouldn't assume. One of the biggest things that stuck out to me as their needs is they need another pass rusher. And the reason I know that defense has been dominant, they got so many first rounders on the front line of there. But when it came down to that Philly game, it really stuck out to me that they need more pass rushers. Philly's offensive line was able to pretty much handle Bosa and Kinlaw, and there was nothing else there. There was no other pressure on Jalen Hurts, and that's why Philly was able to handle it pretty easily in the playoffs. So they definitely have to add some big-name pass rusher to really shore up that defense. They're losing they're losing Ward out of their secondary, which is a big name that they'll be losing. And then they're losing Mike McGillicuddy, I think is how you say it, at right tackle on the offense. So I expect them to probably bring Mike back just because their line has been so good. And Mosley was the other corner they're also losing on defense. So I expect them to try to bring Mike back as the right tackle, and then it'll be fun to see kind of what they do with their secondary. They are 2.8 over the cap limit or under the cap limit. So just a little bit of money to work with, not a whole lot. They're well below the league average. And they have they do not have a first or a second round pick this year. So they're going to have to really turn to free agency to turn a whole lot around. They have 3/3, 3/5, 3/5, a 6th, and 3 7th round picks. So and very little money to turn this around. They're only a piece or two away from really being a Super Bowl team. They got their cards right in this free agency, in my mind. And if they don't, they're going to still be a piece or two away, and that's it. So I maybe Trey Lance is a trade chip. I don't know what they want to do at their quarterback situation. So San Fran's going to be an interesting team. Maybe they go all out and go get Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he can put them over the hump there. Who knows? You know, he can't beat him. Got to join them.
He came out and said at the golf tournament he's definitely not going to San Francisco, so that we can rule it out. He didn't even need the darkness retreat for that one. I think when you come to talk about San Fran, unfortunately I think the quarterback situation kind of answers itself, just because, like you just brought it up, they don't have a first and second. A lot of that's still at parts of the deals that they did to get Trey Lance done and over the line. And you know, as far as trading Trey Lance goes right now, he's an untradeable asset. He's done nothing to show what he's capable of in the NFL, and he got hurt last year. So he's coming off of an injury, and again, like I said, the value is just too low for them to move him. So the one thing I think that Trey Lance has going for him is for the start of next season, he's going to be the only healthy rostered quarterback in San Fran as of now, obviously with Jimmy G being a free agent with Brock Purdy tearing it. What was it? His UCL or something like that joint in his elbow. He's going to be well after training camp when he comes back. They're talking like maybe week 1 or 2 of the season he may be able to start practicing. So I know George Kittle came out and said this is Brock Purdy's team now, and that's all well and good, and it was a fun story while it lasted. But if you actually go dive into Brock Purdy's numbers, they really weren't all that fantastic. So I do think you gave up all that to get Trey Lance. Everybody who's in the organization that wanted Trey Lance is still there. There's no turnover at the head coach or in the GM level. So I still think it's going to be a Trey Lance show. But Brant, you're absolutely right. They're still really just a decent quarterback and maybe a couple more pieces away from being right back there as a Super Bowl contender. I think that a lot of us thought they were going into this season. So definitely be interesting to see what they do to get that fixed. So let's go ahead and move on and jump into the AFC West, where we have the perennial Super Bowl contending and winning this year Chiefs. And I'm not going to start with them, though, as much as I want to. I'm not going to start with them right now. I'm going to start with the Los Angeles Chargers, just because I think there's a little bit more intriguing stuff going on here. So currently the Chargers are $22 million over the cap limit. So there's not a whole lot of budget for any kind of players. As far as like notable free agents they have going, really the biggest one is Jalen Guyton. On offense or defense, there wasn't really anybody huge that stuck out. Kyle Van Noy, I guess he's only been there for a year, but Jalen Guyton kind of came on and stole a lot of people's hearts along with Joshua Palmer this year there in free agency, that people were able to go pick up from free agency. I'm sorry. In a lot of NFL leagues. Brand, I know you played Jalen Guyton quite a bit and had him rostered off and on. And he's a guy that we talked about on the show. I know Sunday Morning Lives, you couldn't pick between Jalen Guyton and Joshua Palmer correctly. It was the opposite one that had a good week the week you picked one. But nonetheless, that's really about the only noticeable thing. So they should be a pretty good team again next year. Something that I thought was interesting is they have all 7 of their own draft picks and not another pick else. That's it. They have. The expectations are, I think, when it comes to the Chargers is that, like another wide receiver would be nice, obviously, potentially. And then obviously you just talked about his brother, but getting Joey Bosa some help to the front line there in LA would be nice. But the biggest rumor that I think, similarly to the Los Angeles Rams, is a pretty noticeable name that may be a trade candidate or a cap cut in Keenan Allen. So that's definitely got some big fantasy implications on it for a lot of folks. That would obviously pull some fantasy relevancy away from guys like Justin Herbert as well. And I'm not sure Mike Williams can hold up to a full season of being the guy. So it'd be interesting to see if, LA decides to go out and draft another wide receiver. I've heard a lot of people talking like Quentin Johnson and Jackson Smith and Jigba potentially to the Chargers. I've seen them mock there a handful of times. So it'll be interesting to see what they do because this is another team, especially heading into last season, that I, among myself and a lot of others that I would bet would have put a decent amount of money on the Chargers to be contending. And that just didn't happen last year. And then, they let Joe Lombardi leave as the offensive coordinator. So there's some turnover there. So definitely just be really interesting. This is another team. They don't have, like I said, they don't have a ton of money. They don't have a ton of draft picks. So without making some trades and doing some cuts to make some other things work, this is going to be a pretty boring offseason for Los Angeles Chargers and their fan base.
Yeah, that was an offense that was supposed to be very explosive, and at times they were, but at times they weren't. Mike Williams definitely, he couldn't even hold up to a whole workload as the number 2 wideout, so we probably won't see him hold up to a number 1 wideout whole load. So the Chargers are going to be kind of a boring team this offseason in my mind, but we'll see what happens. I think like it's almost like Arizona. The only good thing they may have is moving D-Hop. The only good thing that the Chargers may have going is moving on from Keenan Allen and see what they get. So I'm going to jump over here to these are fun to talk about. I'm going to jump into Denver, and with the new coach Sean Payton, They gave up some assets to go get him, who will try to unlock the legend of Russell Wilson and see if that little guy has any more left in him. I expect Russell to turn it around next year and have a better year. I don't know if he'll return to his MVP.
Can't get much worse, can it?
No, I don't think he'll return to his MVP years or his half a MVP years. But he'll get a boost with Javonte Williams coming back. Williams and Chase Edmonds are the only two running backs under contract for Denver next year as of right now. I expect them to add some help. And as for the defensive side of the ball, I didn't see a whole lot of notable names being gone. I know that they're going to have to get some help. Their defense did not live up to the hype that they had. They were unable to generate a whole lot of pass rush. So adding a linebacker and a pass rusher are definitely probably two of the top things they need to do. I know they're talking about moving on from either Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton. I know they've talked about moving on from one of those wideouts. I know they've talked about moving on from some of the big names there on defense. So they definitely will be fun to watch in the trade category. As for free agency, they have $12 million in cap room to maneuver around with. So a little bit above league average, about $3 million over league average. So they'll be fun to see that what happens there. They got to add an interior lineman to keep some of that pressure off of Russell Wilson. That was one of the biggest things, was that he was always under pressure. So, I mean, you go from Seattle to where you're one of the most hit quarterback over to Denver, where you may not have been the most hit, but you definitely were down there and being hit quite often. So, like I said, with $12 million in cap room and 6 draft picks, they don't have a first or second. They do have 2/3, a 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round pick to work with. They'll be interesting to see what kind of players they are. Like I said, they've got to do something with their defense to get back to the Denver that we all know. Denver's known for downhill power running type team and a strong defense. And right now, Javonte Williams got hurt early, so we didn't get to really see him unleashed. Will he be back to the normal or back to the Javonte Williams that we all thought he was going to be this past year? Will Russell get unlocked? What will they add in free agency with that money? I think they have to focus on the defensive side and address the offensive line in the draft. But they've got to get some help there. And if they let one of those wideouts go in, they're going to have to get some wideout help too, because I think KJ Hamler may have been a free agent. So what does that leave? Tim Patrick still there, maybe? Mm-hmm. So they'll be struggling at the wide receiver spot from one of them. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason. No, KJ Hamler is not a free agent. So, yeah. So Denver will be a team that's interesting to see.
Yeah. So I think Denver was one of the biggest, right there with probably the Los Angeles Rams as far as a huge letdown, this year, as far as like teams that we thought were going to do great. And then they absolutely didn't do anything. And it was just like what in the heck is going on here? But the good news, Brant, and I think the most important thing that you brought up, is that they have $12 million in salary cap. They can officially go hire Russell Wilson's personal quarterback coach and get actual keys to the building instead of having to be snuck in the back door. It's like Sean Payton said, he's not coming in if he's not part of the staff. Well, he could be part of the staff. You got $12 million in salary cap. Share the love, Sean. Let Russell have his guy. That's obviously what was holding him back last year. Oh wait, that guy was in the building and it made no difference. I don't know what to make of that, because, so many people, were all over Cortland Sutton and all over Jerry Jeudy and all over Albert Okegunwanabum just because of everybody thought Russ was going to come in and take that offense to the next level. But, honestly, Russ's time in Denver may be worse than Drew Lock's at this point. Hot take that, if you will. I don't know. But after one season, I think I'd rather have Drew Lock under center than I would Russell Wilson if I'm a Denver fan. But, hey, that ship sailed. So, too late for givesies and takesies, backsies. Let's move on to the Super Bowl champs here. This team's going to be really interesting. Currently, they're $500,000 over the salary cap. So, there's wiggle room. Just because you're over it doesn't mean you can't go over it more. I mean, obviously, the Tampa Bay Bucks have showed us that you can go all the way to almost $60 million over the salary cap. So, it'd definitely be interesting to see how this plays out. But you've got some massive free agents here in Kansas City. Probably one of the best offensive left tackles in football in Orlando Brown, who's coming off of his rookie deal and has still not been given a deal. I would expect him to 100%, without question, be franchise tagged. They're not letting this cat walk away. Patrick Mahomes is not getting smoked on his blind side, not why there's a chance that they can do something with Orlando Brown. So I think that definitely happens. And then they have Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman, both as free agents. So their wide receiving core takes a hit, which I know Pat showed that he can do it this year without big names. In the absence of Tyreek Hill, obviously Travis Kelce, no disrespect, no shade thrown, is still very much a big name. But he's not a wideout. So I digress. Andrew Wiley, another starter, from the offensive line as a free agent. And then a guy who won a lot of people, a lot of leagues down the stretch. And Jerick McKinnon is also a free agent. So maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know. Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably an afterthought at this point in the backfield. But nonetheless, not really any huge pieces, some rotational guys for defense, not going to be back, but I think the star of their defense, and I'm going to throw a little extra love out there because he's from Mizzou, and Nick Bolton, I think he may end up being the star of that defensive side of the football that Patrick Mahomes is on the offensive side. Definitely looked the part in the Super Bowl, definitely looked the part in the playoff run. So we'll see how that progresses. But these guys have 9 draft picks, 7 of which are in the top 200 picks. So you talk about the difference between them and the Rams. The Rams are, had the Super Bowl hangover, and now they only have 2 picks inside the top 180, whereas Kansas City's coming off of the Super Bowl and still have 7 picks inside the top 200. So significantly different draft board's probably going to be getting worked on the past 2 Super Bowl champs here. So definitely think that Kansas City is in a very, very good spot this offseason. They should have no problem getting, anybody they want back on the door, getting deals done. I think the biggest offseason question for these guys is how do you repeat or potentially at least avoid the Super Bowl hangover? I think that's a thing that a lot of teams deal with, but it seems like the front office in Kansas City's pretty top notch. Obviously, they have a great head coach in Andy Reid. And I think, honestly, you're going to start seeing guys do with Patrick Mahomes what guys did with Tom Brady. Listen, I've still got a few good years left in the tank. I'm a perennial Pro Bowler. I'm going to take, a league cut, decent cut from what I normally get paid a year to come down to town and play with Pat and chase a ring. So I expect them to have no lack of options when it comes to free agents. But the big thing here is what weapons are you going to give Patrick Mahomes next year? Because you can't give him none. It's one thing to trade his best away, but it's another thing to let Juju and McCole out the door this offseason. Justin Watson's also a free agent. I didn't really bring him up because he was out there very sporadically on the offense. But that's 3 guys that saw playing time, 3 guys that caught passes from Patrick Mahomes walking out the door, who's with Patrick Mahomes, I'm sorry, he's more talented than Tom Brady. I won't ever say he's better, or at least not at this point, but he's more talented. He's got more natural abilities than Tom Brady does. And I think you're doing an absolute disservice for the NFL if you don't give him some weapons back. So I'll be very intrigued to see what Kansas City does as far as, Juju and McCole Hardman, or if there's, DJ Chark or somebody's going to come in the door here, or if they spend some of these draft picks on guys like, Brant, you and I talked about this a little bit a while ago when we were still working through some of the wide receiver, rookie projections and stuff. But if you put a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnson, or Jordan Addison in the Kansas City offense, they shoot up draft boards. Especially for obviously for the rookies and non-super flex, these guys are going to be top 3 picks at that point. I'm not sure you put them over Jahmyr Gibbs, and I certainly would never advocate for putting those guys over Bijan Robinson, but it'd be really hard not to be intrigued by one of those guys if they end up in this offense.
Yeah, and I definitely could see them using their first round draft pick to add a wide receiver, because why not tie 5-year wide receiver to Patrick Mahomes? That way you're not having this turnover every offseason. I know, they tried to tie Tyreek Hill, but, he wanted more money than they could offer. and they did the right thing by him. I don't think there was any hard feelings. I expect Juju to be back. I think Juju's having too much fun. It sounds like the rumor mill is they are not picking up the 5th-year option on CEH. So I think they've kind of made their decision on him. He's out the door.
Sure.
Not this season, but next. So he would have to do something dramatic. The Chiefs are going to be fun to watch, just like they always are. They do a lot of moves. A lot of people want to come play with Patrick Mahomes, like you said. So the Chiefs will always be fun to watch. Unfortunately, I hate saying that. As we move on from the New England dynasty, it's now the Chiefs dynasty, and everybody's going to want a piece of it. Everybody's going to want their opportunity to get themselves a ring.
Listen, I hated the Tom Brady dynasty in New England. I respect it, but I hated it. I'm having so much fun with this Kansas City one right now. Travis Kelce adds all the personality. Patrick Mahomes is a likable guy. I'm all for it. Welcome to the Red Kingdom. Until my Falcons are decent enough to contend. When they're not, when my team's not making the playoffs, it might as well be Kansas City. I don't care.
So I'm gonna go into the last team in this division, and probably one of the most fun teams to watch this offseason, because Lord knows what they're going to do. And that's the Las Vegas Raiders. They cut their quarterback. Are they going to start Jason Statham? Josh Jacobs is probably out the door. I don't see him staying. Devontae Adams wants to have some say on who the quarterback is coming in, and who is going to be there in Vegas. So the Raiders got a lot to figure out, and they've got plenty of money to do it. They have $45 million under the cap to do it, so they have plenty of money to do it now, to make a huge big splash of free agency. They got 9 picks. They got a first, second, third, fourth, 2 fifths, a 6, and 2 sevenths. So they can make a lot of moves in the draft. They can make a lot of moves in the free agency. They need a lot of positions. I know they're losing some big or decent names on the offensive side. We said 2 of them, and Jacobs and Carr are both gone. And as for the wide receivers, what's going to happen with Waller? Could he be a guy that could be on the move? Mac Hollins is gone. So it sounds like they're going to have to do some stuff on the offensive side of the ball. And then you look at their defensive side of the ball, and Farrell, their defensive end, is a free agent. And then Rocky Sin is also a free agent. And then Anthony Everett, both starting corners, I believe, are both free agents there. I'd actually have to look at their snap share, but I believe both of those were their starting corners this past year. So they need a whole lot of everything. They weren't a contending team in most games. Well, I guess in games they were. They weren't a contending team going down the stretch really to make any big splash in the playoffs. So the team will be fun to see what they do. I know Adams will probably be lobbying to get his best friend and Aaron Rodgers back over to hang out with him, but I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the Raiders, but I do know it's going to be very interesting. They got plenty of money and plenty of draft capital to do it, and they got a top 5 pick, I believe. I believe they were at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Or
7, number 7.
Are they 7? Okay,
they're 7.
Colts
are 4 right now.
Their hands full in this season. They're definitely going to have their hands in the honey pot. They're going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch this offseason.
Yeah, I tell you what would be a fun marriage is if CJ Stroud were to somehow slide down to number 7 and him end up in Vegas. I think, that could be an extremely fun one, because he's got a huge arm, and, Devontae and Renfro can both get loose down the stretch, and that'd be a fun marriage to see. But you're right, Brant. Vegas is going to be, tons of fun this off season. They got the cap space, they got the draft capital, they've got the own in-house free agents. What do they do with Josh Jacobs? Is it going to be the Zamir White show? So that's going to be a ton of fun, just like you alluded to. And I genuinely think that this AFC West may be the most active division in football this year, just because of potential outgoing guys, incoming guys. It's already hard to beat what the Raiders have done with Derek Carr, and if they don't re-sign Josh Jacobs, that's going to be the whole identity of that offense last year basically is gone. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that team and the division as a whole picks up and moves on. So I know next week, Brant, we're going to do the NFC East and the AFC East, moving through the eastern side of it next. There's a lot of fun teams to talk about there, man. So that'll be another. I think it's a fun episode. It's not sexy, I guess, but it's definitely fun to talk about some guys that could be moving places and things that teams need to work on and things need to be ready for. I know I speak for both of us when I say I'm ready to start doing mock drafts and stuff instead, but you start something, you finish it. So we're going to get through this. It's imperative. It makes sense. And, there's the stuff that we're talking about today and last week and then the next 2 weeks definitely have impacts on fantasy off season. So definitely something to keep in mind, something to listen to, and as always, Brant, I think we're still open to guys. If anybody wants to join us for mock drafts and stuff like that, hit us up, let us know. Because I think the idea is that as the NFL draft starts wrapping up, we're going to start doing some of these rookie mocks, see where we have these guys going in order and stuff. So,
yeah, absolutely. Mock draft season's coming for Dynasty, and free agency's coming up quick for the NFL. We're in the midst of franchise tag season. I know none of the big names have been tagged yet, but that's coming. So yeah, definitely reach out to us because like you said, we're going to be doing mocks here shortly. We would love to get everybody involved and everyone that we can get involved. And rather than it just being you and me going back and forth, because that could get kind of stale too. So the more guys we get in, the better it gets to go. Well, like I said, we're going to go to the East next, and as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.